For centuries, humanity had dreamed of reaching the stars. We had built cities that floated above clouds, ships that traveled between planets, and machines that could think faster than any human mind. But even with all that progress, there was still one truth we couldn't escape. In the eyes of the greater galaxy, we were nothing more than newcomers, children playing with cosmic fire. The galaxy was vast, filled with civilizations far older than ours, races that had walked among the stars long before Earth had even cooled from its birth. They had empires that stretched across hundreds of worlds, knowledge that could reshape matter itself, and technologies that seemed like magic to us. When humanity finally stepped into that grand arena of galactic existence, we expected welcome and curiosity. Instead, we were laughed at. They saw our ships, clunky by their standards, made of metal and fuel instead of living energy. They saw our communication systems, digital and limited, not the telepathic resonance networks they used. And they saw our people, emotional, unpredictable, still clinging to the idea of hope in a cold universe. To them, we were entertainment. Across the interstellar networks, broadcasts mocked our attempts at exploration. Alien commentators compared us to cave dwellers who had accidentally found a star map. Memes and jokes about the primitive humans circulated on 1,000 worlds. We became the punchline of the galaxy's late-night shows. But humans have always had one strange habit. The more the world laughs at them, the more determined they become. While the galaxy mocked, humanity built. Quietly, patiently, in hidden research stations orbiting dying stars. In secret bases buried beneath the moons of Jupiter, human scientists worked on something no alien dared to touch. They called it Project Helios Gate, a mission so dangerous, so far beyond accepted science, that even our allies refused to support it. The goal was simple, at least on paper, to open a path into what scientists called the seventh dimension. It wasn't a place anyone could see or measure. It was pure theory, a layer of reality where the laws of physics broke apart. Most civilizations avoided it entirely. They said it swallowed ships, erased timelines, and destroyed everything that entered. To them, it was a myth, a graveyard of broken experiments. But to humanity, it was a challenge. We wanted to prove that the impossible could be reached, that there were still doors left to open in the universe. Maybe it was pride. Maybe it was desperation to be respected. Maybe it was both. But once the project began, there was no turning back. At the center of it all was a ship called the Dauntless, humanity's most advanced creation. Unlike any other vessel before it, it wasn't just designed for speed or strength. It was designed to survive the unknown. Its structure was built from quantum-layered alloys. Its engines could fold space like paper, and its core was powered by something entirely new, an energy pulse drawn from the edge of a black hole. The Dauntless wasn't just a ship, it was a statement. Before launch day, a small ceremony was held in orbit above Earth. Billions watched from screens across the solar system. The atmosphere was heavy with both hope and fear. Humanity's leaders stood before the cameras, knowing this mission might be remembered as our greatest victory, or our final mistake. And beyond our world, across the stars, the laughter grew louder. Alien networks broadcast live coverage of the launch, calling it the Human Suicide Project. Commentators predicted the ship wouldn't last a minute beyond its jump point. One alien historian even said, "Let the humans chase their ghosts. They'll find only darkness," but deep down many of them were curious. For all their mockery, they tuned in to watch, some out of arrogance, others perhaps out of the faint hope that humanity might do something no one else dared. The Dauntless left orbit in silence. Its engines flared blue and disappeared into a streak of light, heading toward the edge of known space. Inside, the crew worked calmly. They weren't warriors or heroes, just scientists, engineers, and explorers driven by a shared belief that humanity could still surprise the universe. For weeks, the ship traveled through the void. It passed abandoned stations, empty worlds, and broken satellites, reminders of civilizations that had once tried to reach the same goal and failed. The crew recorded everything, sending signals back home. Every day, their updates became shorter, the data stranger. Space itself began to distort around them. Then one day, the transmission stopped. Every sensor in the galaxy went silent. Humanity's networks couldn't locate the ship. Alien observatories across dozens of systems confirmed the same thing. The Dauntless had vanished. No explosion, no debris. Just gone. The Galactic Council quickly issued a statement. They called it an unfortunate but expected result. They said humanity's experiment had proven what everyone already knew, that the seventh dimension was impossible to enter. Across alien worlds, the laughter returned. Memes, jokes, and talk shows mocked humanity's failure. Some even called for a ban on human-led scientific projects, saying we were too reckless to be trusted with cosmic energy. But back on Earth, there was no laughter. There was only silence and waiting. For months, humanity searched. Probes were sent. Long-range telescopes scanned deep space. Even our allies offered their help, but nothing was found. The Dauntless had truly vanished beyond the edge of measurable reality. Yet even in that silence, something felt strange. Scientists monitoring gravitational fields began noticing slight fluctuations, small ripples that shouldn't exist. Time itself seemed to twitch around certain coordinates. Deep in classified observatories, readings appeared that made no sense. It was as if space was remembering something. Rumors spread among the research stations. Some claimed to have heard faint signals, whispers buried in static. Others said they'd seen flashes, brief moments when the stars seemed to bend as if reality itself was trying to fix a hole. No one could prove it. No one could explain it. But one thing became clear. The Dauntless might not be destroyed. Then almost a year after its disappearance, a message appeared in one of Earth's deep space channels. It wasn't words. It wasn't sound. It was a pulse, a rhythmic sequence of energy unlike anything seen before. Scientists analyzed it for weeks before realizing it matched the ship's original energy signature. It was weak, broken, but unmistakable. The Dauntless was alive. When the news broke, the galaxy stopped laughing. Every major civilization tuned in again. Observatories across star systems tried to trace the signal's source, but it kept shifting, as if it were moving through layers of existence. Something was happening out there, something no one could understand. Humanity watched the skies and waited. For the first time in a long while, even those who mocked us grew quiet. And somewhere, beyond the edge of space, beyond the reach of any known science, the crew of the Dauntless stared into a realm that had no stars. No sound and no time. They weren't lost. They were the first to step into something the universe itself had forgotten. But the galaxy didn't know that yet. To them, the Dauntless was still a tragedy, a failed human dream. They couldn't imagine that what humanity had found would one day shake the very foundation of their reality. They didn't know that the Dauntless had crossed a boundary no civilization had ever survived. They didn't know that in silence and in darkness, humanity was about to learn the secrets of existence itself. And so, while the galaxy continued its laughter, while the news networks replayed the same jokes, while scholars dismissed the entire experiment as foolishness, something unseen began to stir beyond dimensions, something that carried the name of humanity, and it was coming back. For centuries, people on Earth had dreamed of reaching the stars. They built ships that could cross planets, machines that could think faster than any human, and stations that floated above the clouds. Yet when humankind finally stepped out into the wider galaxy, they discovered something that hurt more than any danger of space. The others out there didn't take them seriously. The galaxy was already full of ancient races that had lived among the stars for ages. Their empires stretched across hundreds of worlds. Their science could bend light, shape gravity, even move whole moons. Compared to them, humans looked small and noisy, clever perhaps, but still learning to walk. When the first human ambassadors arrived at the Galactic Council, the welcome was polite, but cold. The aliens admired Earth's courage but laughed at its technology. They said our ships looked industrial. They joked about our reliance on metal instead of living crystal or energy matter. They called humans emotional and unpredictable, ruled by hope instead of logic. Soon the laughter spread. Alien news networks turned Earth into a daily punchline. Jokes about the enthusiastic primitives filled interstellar talk shows. To them, humans were a curious new species that would burn brightly for a while and then fade away. But humans have a strange quality. When someone tells them they can't do something, that's exactly when they decide to try. So, while the galaxy was busy laughing, Earth scientists began to work in silence. They built hidden research bases under the ice of Europa and deep beneath Mars. They gathered the best minds and gave them one goal: to open a door no one else dared to touch. The project was called Helios Gate. Its purpose was simple to describe but almost impossible to achieve: to reach the mysterious seventh dimension. Every known civilization agreed that this place existed only in theory, a layer of reality where time and matter broke down. No one had ever returned from attempting to enter it. The council called it the edge of existence, a zone that erased anything that crossed its threshold. To most species, that was enough reason to stay away. To humans, it was an invitation. They wanted to prove that the impossible could be reached. Some hoped for knowledge, some for pride, some simply to stop the laughter. Whatever the reason, the work continued year after year until a single ship was built: the Dauntless. The Dauntless wasn't the largest ship ever made, but it was the most daring. Its frame was made of quantum-layered alloys able to shift between energy states. Its core drew power from a captured pulse at the edge of a black hole. Inside, it carried the newest navigation system ever designed by human minds, one that could read distortions in reality itself. The day of launch became a global event. Billions watched as the ship floated above Earth's atmosphere, glowing in the sunlight. The crew stood ready, not soldiers but explorers, engineers, and dreamers. They knew the risk. They also knew that history would remember them either as heroes or as fools. Across the galaxy, alien commentators filled the airwaves. Some warned that humans were about to destroy themselves. Others called the mission a suicide parade. Still others placed bets on how long the ship would last before being torn apart. In entertainment halls on distant worlds, crowds gathered to watch the broadcast like a comedy show. But aboard the Dauntless, everything was calm. The engines flared, a bright blue light spreading through the void, and then the ship slipped away into hyperspace. Days turned into weeks. Updates arrived regularly at first. Data packets describing strange gravitational fields, flickering lights, and energy readings that no one had ever recorded. But as the ship moved farther from known space, the messages grew shorter. Then one day they stopped altogether. All across the galaxy, every tracking signal vanished. The Dauntless was gone. The Galactic Council held a press conference within hours. They offered polite condolences and then used the loss as a warning. Human curiosity, they said, must have limits. Across alien networks, the laughter returned. Hosts joked that humans had finally found a place where even their stubbornness couldn't save them. They tried to touch the divine, one commentator said, and became dust. But on Earth, the mood was very different. There was no laughter, only silence. Families of the crew waited for news that never came. The space agencies refused to give up. New probes were launched. Scanners combed the sky for any trace of the missing ship. Months passed, nothing. Then something strange began to happen. Instruments across human observatories detected tiny ripples in space, small repeating waves that didn't fit any known pattern. They were weak at first, barely noticeable, but they returned again and again, like a heartbeat coming from far away. Scientists compared the data with the Dauntless's last known energy signature, and their results made the world stop. The pattern was identical. At first, no one dared believe it. Could the Dauntless still be alive? The signal was faint, broken by static, shifting in frequency as if passing through layers of glass. Every attempt to locate it failed. The source seemed to move, sometimes behind a star, sometimes from nowhere at all. News spread quickly. The same networks that had mocked humanity now turned serious. If this signal is real, said one alien scientist, then the humans may have done the impossible. Suddenly, the laughter stopped. The council ordered its scientists to verify the data. Observatories across 10 systems pointed their sensors toward the coordinates Earth had released. Every reading told the same story. Something powerful was stirring in the depths of space. For the first time, the galaxy watched Earth not with amusement but with unease. Back home, the project leaders replayed the signal hundreds of times. They discovered that it wasn't random noise. It carried rhythm, beats, pauses, almost like a coded message. A repeating pulse that translated to one simple sequence. We see. No one knew what it meant. Was the crew trying to communicate? Were they alive? Had they found something inside the seventh dimension that allowed them to reach back? The questions multiplied, but answers did not. Meanwhile, strange effects began appearing near the edge of known space. Sensors picked up distortions in gravity. Distant satellites caught brief flashes, like reflections of light from something enormous, something partly invisible. Some said it was just interference. Others whispered that the Dauntless was returning. The Council dismissed those rumors. They issued a statement claiming the readings were natural space anomalies, but many of their own scientists disagreed. Quietly, they admitted that the data didn't fit any known natural pattern. As the debate continued, Earth's people did something unusual. They stopped caring about what the rest of the galaxy thought. The laughter, the insults, the arrogance of the older species, it all faded into the background. Humanity focused on one thing only: finding their ship. Weeks passed. The signal weakened, then strengthened again, almost as if something was breathing out there in the dark. Some researchers said they could hear faint tones hidden inside the pulse, almost like music. One technician even claimed he heard a voice, like soft, distant, calling his name. No one believed him, but the story spread anyway. The Dauntless had become a legend. Children learned about it in schools. Artists painted what they imagined the seventh dimension looked like: a sea of shifting colors and endless light. For the first time in decades, Earth felt united by hope instead of fear. And somewhere far beyond the reach of any telescope, beyond the last echo of known space, a ship drifted in a place without time. The crew floated inside a glow that wasn't light and listened to whispers that weren't sound. They had not been destroyed. They had crossed over, but the galaxy didn't know that yet. To the rest of the universe, the Dauntless was still missing, another failed human dream. To the people on Earth, it was a mystery waiting to be solved. And to the few who could feel the strange pull in the depths of space, it was something more, a promise that humanity had just taken its first real step into the unknown. As the signal faded again, Earth scientists made one final note in the log: if they're alive, they are no longer where we can follow. No one understood then what that truly meant. The galaxy continued with its daily routines, confident that the humans had finally learned their lesson. They laughed once more, though not as loudly as before, because deep down something about that faint rhythmic pulse unsettled them. It was as if the universe itself had begun to whisper back. And far away, somewhere beyond the stars, the Dauntless listened. No one truly understood what had happened to the Dauntless after it vanished. For those back in the galaxy, it was as if the ship had fallen off the map of reality itself. But for the people aboard, it was the beginning of something far stranger than anyone could have imagined. When the Dauntless entered the seventh dimension, everything changed. There was no sky, no space, no darkness, just an endless glow, soft and shifting like liquid light. The stars were gone. Even time lost its meaning. The crew couldn't tell how long they'd been there, minutes, hours, or centuries. Their instruments spun out of control, showing numbers that made no sense. At first, fear took hold. Systems failed one by one and communication with Earth completely disappeared. The ship floated in silence. The crew looked out through the windows, expecting to see only emptiness. But then something began to move. It wasn't a shape or a creature. It was more like a pattern, waves of light rippling across the endless glow, dancing slowly as if alive. The energy around them seemed to hum, almost like a deep song. The vibrations passed through the ship's walls and into their very bones. It wasn't painful, just awakening. When they spoke to each other, their voices echoed in ways that defied sound. Words carried feelings, images, and memories all at once. They realized the dimension itself was responding to them, not with language, but with awareness. The seventh dimension wasn't empty. It was alive. They began to understand that this place wasn't chaos. It was order on a scale no one had ever seen before. Every light wave carried information, every pulse a story of creation itself. The crew's scientists worked tirelessly, trying to make sense of it all, even as their tools became useless. Their computers couldn't process the data because the data itself was beyond logic. Then something incredible happened. The ship's core, its heart of quantum energy, began to react. The glowing waves outside synchronized with the pulse of the engine, as if recognizing something familiar. The ship trembled softly, not from damage, but from connection. The Dauntless had become part of the dimension. Suddenly, their minds began to fill with images, flashes of distant galaxies, the birth of stars, the rise and fall of civilizations billions of years old. They saw structures made of pure energy, drifting through time before matter had even existed. They saw beings not made of flesh or form, but light, consciousness woven together like threads in an endless tapestry. These beings were the first ones, the architects of existence. They were not gods, not monsters, but creators who had shaped the foundation of the universe before stepping beyond it. They had left behind this dimension as a library, a living memory of everything that had ever been. And now, for reasons no one could explain, humanity had found it. The crew realized that they weren't just observing the dimension, they were being observed in return. The energy field shifted whenever they moved. When they tried to speak, the patterns changed, answering them with rhythm and light. The more they focused, the more they felt something communicating back, softly, patiently, as if teaching them. At first, it was overwhelming. Thoughts flooded their minds faster than they could process. Their memories, emotions, even their sense of self, seemed to blend with the flow of the dimension. But slowly they adapted. Humanity had always been good at learning. They started to use their own consciousness as a tool. Instead of reading data through machines, they began to feel it. Every person aboard discovered that the more they opened their minds, the clearer the dimension's message became. It wasn't just showing them the universe's history, it was asking them to remember something deeper. They began to understand a truth that changed everything. Reality wasn't fixed. It wasn't a single layer of existence, but countless ones stacked together, each influencing the other like ripples on water. What we call time and space were just the simplest parts of a much greater design. The seventh dimension was the blueprint, the place where every choice, every possibility, every version of the universe existed side by side, and humanity, somehow, had found a way to stand inside it. The crew shared their discoveries with one another, trying to stay calm even as their world expanded beyond comprehension. They spoke about what this meant, not just for them, but for everyone who had ever lived. If what they were seeing was true, then the universe wasn't random. It was a living system of memory and energy, and humanity was a part of it. Hours, or maybe ages, passed. The glow around the ship began to form patterns like threads of light weaving together. At first, they thought it was just another vision. But then, the patterns began to take shape. Symbols, spirals, fractals that pulsed in rhythm with their heartbeats. It was communication. The architects were teaching them. They learned that the seventh dimension wasn't a prison or a void. It was the origin point of creation. The first civilizations had discovered it long ago, used its power to shape galaxies, and then vanished into it. Over time, others had tried to reach it, but all had failed because they treated it like a place to conquer, not a consciousness to understand. Humanity, for all its flaws, had come here not to dominate but to discover. That difference mattered. Because of that curiosity, that willingness to ask instead of demand, the dimension responded. It accepted them. The Dauntless began to change. Its solid structure softened into shimmering patterns. The walls seemed to breathe, and the crew could move through them as if through mist. Their technology stopped functioning the way it used to, but it didn't matter. They didn't need it anymore. The ship itself was evolving, becoming a bridge between their physical world and this higher reality. Then came the moment none of them would forget. The entire dimension pulsed with light, brighter than anything they had ever seen. It wasn't blinding, it was beautiful, gentle, endless. And within that light they heard something that every human heart recognized. It was a voice not made of words, but meaning. It said only one thing: "You remember us, and so we remember you." In that instant, the crew felt a connection that went beyond understanding. They saw flashes of Earth, of humanity's long struggle, of every person who had ever dreamed of something greater. They felt the laughter of children, the warmth of sunlight, the echo of every human heartbeat. The architects weren't separate from them. They were the universe remembering itself through life. Humanity had always been part of that design, they just hadn't realized it yet. The light faded slowly, and when it did, the ship was no longer lost. It stood between realities, balanced on the edge of both. The Dauntless had become a living bridge between the known and the unknown. The crew looked out into the endless glow and realized they had achieved what no other race had done. They had crossed into the seventh dimension and returned with understanding instead of destruction. But they also knew something else. They couldn't stay forever. The dimension had given them its gift, knowledge, connection, and a message to carry back. They were meant to return, to share what they had learned with the universe that once laughed at them. Slowly, the light around them began to bend, folding inward like the closing of a dream. The patterns of energy wrapped around the ship gently, guiding it back toward the stars. As the Dauntless re-entered normal space, the crew could feel reality snapping back into place. The stars returned. The darkness of space surrounded them again, but nothing looked the same. The ship itself glowed faintly, layered in colors no one had ever seen. Instruments came alive, showing readings that no known science could explain. They had changed, and so had the ship. For a long moment, no one spoke. Then one of them whispered what everyone felt inside. We went there as explorers, and came back as witnesses. And far away in the depths of the seventh dimension, something vast and ancient pulsed once more, as if watching. The universe had opened one of its deepest secrets to humanity, and from that moment forward, nothing would ever be the same again. When the Dauntless returned, it did not arrive like any normal ship. It did not appear on scanners or radar first. It didn't broadcast a message or flash a light across the void. It simply appeared suddenly, silently on the edge of a quiet star system. For several long minutes, no one even noticed. The first to detect it were a group of miners working on a small asteroid colony nearby. They saw the stars bend as if space itself was being stretched. Then a shape began to form. At first, it looked like a reflection, a mirage floating in the dark. But slowly, that reflection became real. The Dauntless emerged, glowing softly with layers of shifting color. It was still shaped like a ship, but no longer entirely made of metal. It shimmered part solid, part light, existing in more than one place at once. Every second, its outline changed slightly, as if it was flickering between realities. The miners panicked. They tried to contact the Galactic Council, but their signals failed. Every communication device went silent the moment they aimed it toward the ship. Within hours, the news reached human space. Observatories on Earth and Mars picked up the strange readings. The ship's energy signature matched perfectly with the Dauntless, the same vessel that had vanished almost a year ago. At first, many refused to believe it. Some thought it was an illusion, or a hoax created by rival factions. But then, images came through from an automated drone near the system. The pictures were clear. The Dauntless was real, and it was unlike anything anyone had ever seen. The ship's surface moved like a living thing, breathing in slow waves of color. Around it, the vacuum of space shimmered with faint ripples, bending light and time. It was as if the air around it was alive, humming with energy. When word spread across the galaxy, the laughter that once filled the networks vanished. Every news channel, every alien network, every council broadcast focused on one thing, the impossible. Return of the human ship that everyone had declared destroyed. But no one could explain how it came back. The council immediately sent a fleet of scientific vessels to investigate. They approached carefully, scanning from a safe distance. What they found terrified them. The readings made no sense. The Dauntless was not only occupying one location, it was appearing in several at the same time. Some sensors detected it orbiting the asteroid belt. Others saw it near the edge of the star system, and a few even claimed to detect its presence near entirely different galaxies. The ship was existing in multiple realities simultaneously. Then came the most shocking discovery. Every time a council vessel got too close, their instruments started to fail. Engines flickered, energy systems overloaded, and communication links scrambled. One ship reported that time itself began to loop for a few seconds. They saw the same moment repeat again and again, before their systems shut down completely. The council ordered all ships to pull back. The Dauntless remained perfectly still, not showing any signs of hostility. It didn't fire. It didn't move. It just existed. Back on Earth, humanity watched in awe and fear. The governments debated what to do. Some wanted to reach out to send a message to their crew. Others warned that no one knew what the Dauntless had become, or what it might bring with it. But one thing was certain. The ship had changed, and so had the people who were once inside it. When humanity finally sent their own vessel to make contact, they didn't send soldiers or weapons. They sent scientists, engineers, and communicators. As the human ship approached, every person on board felt something strange, a vibration deep and soft echoing inside their minds. It wasn't a sound, but a feeling. A calm voice that didn't use words. The Dauntless seemed to recognize them. As they drew near, the shimmering colors around the ship softened, and a gentle pulse of light spread through the surrounding space. It was as if the ship was welcoming them home. The first scan showed no life signs on board, yet the energy patterns inside the Dauntless looked human, like memories and emotions stored within light itself. It was as if the ship and its crew had become one being, merged into something beyond physical form. When the contact team sent a transmission, a simple signal of greeting, the Dauntless responded instantly. Not with a message, but with a burst of pure light. For a few moments, every system across the fleet shut down, and every person watching saw something incredible. Images appeared in their minds, visions of stars being born, galaxies spinning, and a sea of glowing energy that stretched forever. They saw the faces of the lost crew, calm and peaceful, surrounded by light. Then the vision faded. The council called it a mass hallucination, but humanity knew better. It wasn't an accident. It was communication. The Dauntless was trying to show them what it had found, the truth of the universe that existed beyond their understanding. It wasn't threatening, only sharing, but not everyone saw it that way. Some powerful alien leaders were frightened. They believed the ship's energy could destabilize reality, that it might destroy entire systems if left unchecked. They called emergency meetings and debated drastic measures. The council even considered sending containment weapons to neutralize the threat, even though no threat had been made. Earth objected fiercely. Humanity argued that the Dauntless was part of them, that it wasn't a danger but a discovery that could unite the galaxy. But fear spread faster than reason. Rumors claimed that the ship could rewrite time, erase planets, or open doorways into other dimensions. For weeks, tension grew. Council fleets surrounded the region, keeping their distance but watching constantly. Every species had their eyes on that one silent ship, floating between realities like a ghost of creation itself. But through all the fear and confusion, the Dauntless never moved aggressively. Instead, it began to emit low-frequency pulses at regular intervals. The rhythm resembled a heartbeat, steady, peaceful. Humanity believed it was a sign, a message. Some scientists decoded the frequency and realized something stunning. The pulses were repeating a pattern that matched the fundamental code of existence itself, the mathematical structure of the universe. The Dauntless was showing them how reality was built. It was as if the ship was saying, "Look, this is what lies beneath everything." The discovery stunned even the greatest alien scientists. They had spent thousands of years studying the universe, but none had seen this kind of knowledge before. Slowly, the fear began to fade. Even some council members began to believe that humanity's ship was not a weapon, but a key to understanding the truth of existence. And then, one night, everything went quiet. The Dauntless stopped emitting signals. Its glow dimmed until it was barely visible. The fleets around it reported no movement. It just hung there, motionless, silent. For 3 days, nothing happened. Then, without warning, the ship began to fade. Not vanish instantly, but dissolve softly, like mist melting into the air. Sensors across the galaxy went wild, picking up bursts of quantum energy, gravitational waves, and signals from realities that had never been mapped before. Then, as suddenly as it came, it was gone. The space where it had floated was empty. No explosion. No trace, just silence. For a long time, no one spoke. The galaxy had witnessed something beyond understanding. A human ship that had gone where no civilization dared to go, returned, changed, and then disappeared again, leaving behind only mystery. The council ordered all reports sealed. Officially, the Dauntless was declared lost in deep space, but humanity knew better. They had seen it, felt it, heard its pulse. And though the ship was gone, strange things began to happen in the following years. Small bursts of light appeared randomly in space, patterns that resembled the Dauntless's glow. Scientists found particles that didn't belong to normal reality. Some travelers even reported hearing soft vibrations like a distant heartbeat when passing through certain regions. It was as if the ship had never truly left. Humanity realized that the Dauntless had become something more than a vessel. It was now part of the universe itself, existing in every dimension at once, and wherever it went, it carried the essence of those who dared to go beyond fear, the essence of humanity. From that moment on, No one in the galaxy laughed at Earth again. They had seen what humans were capable of. The courage to reach into the unknown and come back with knowledge that no other race had ever touched. The laughter was gone, replaced by silence, wonder, and, for the first time, respect, and somewhere, beyond all understanding, beyond every map and every law of physics, the Dauntless continued its journey, drifting through dimensions, watching over the universe it once sought to understand. It had gone from being a ship to being a legend. Years passed after the Dauntless disappeared for the second time. The galaxy had changed forever. No one looked at space the same way anymore. The great alien empires that once ruled with arrogance now spoke softly when humanity entered the room. They remembered the ship that came back from beyond existence itself. But even as the story of the Dauntless turned into legend, something deeper was happening. Something that few could see but many could feel. Strange signals began to echo through space. They were faint, like whispers, but filled with structure, as if someone or something was trying to speak through the stars. Every few months, deep space antennas picked up patterns of energy that matched the Dauntless's signature. At first, scientists thought these were random bursts of radiation. But soon they realized there was rhythm in them, like a heartbeat. It was the same steady pulse that the Dauntless had emitted before vanishing. The signals weren't harmful. They didn't interfere with ships or communication networks, but they always carried a message hidden within frequencies. When decoded, the messages showed images, not words, but visions of stars forming, galaxies spinning, and energy flowing like rivers of light. To some, it felt like the Dauntless was still out there, trying to share what it had learned. To others, it was a haunting reminder that the universe had secrets humanity was never meant to uncover. On Earth, people built museums dedicated to the ship. The crew's names were carved into walls of glass, glowing softly under artificial starlight. Children grew up hearing the story of how humans had once touched the seventh dimension and returned alive. But not everyone believed it was over. Deep inside a small human research station, orbiting a dying star, a group of scientists continued to study the last signals the Dauntless had sent. They noticed that the patterns weren't random at all. They formed coordinates. Those coordinates pointed to a region of space that was completely empty. No stars, no planets, just a dark void. When they sent a probe there, it vanished instantly. No explosion, no trace, just gone. Then, weeks later, the probe's data suddenly appeared in their systems, time-stamped with a date from 50 years in the future. The reading showed something extraordinary. There was a structure out there, massive and alive with energy, existing outside normal space-time, and at its center was a shape, a glowing silhouette that looked like a ship. It couldn't be. But the data was clear. The Dauntless was there. Word spread quickly through human space. The Council tried to suppress the discovery, fearing panic or conflict. But it was too late. People were already talking. Rumors filled the networks. Some said the ship was calling for help. Others claimed it had built a doorway to another universe. Humanity was divided. Some wanted to leave it alone, believing the ship had become part of the cosmos and shouldn't be disturbed. Others said it was humanity's duty to find it again, to finish what their ancestors started. Finally, a decision was made. A small crew of explorers volunteered to go. They didn't want fame or reward. They only wanted to know the truth. They prepared a new ship, sleek, strong, and built with the same strange energy patterns once found in the Dauntless's hull. It was the most advanced vessel humanity had ever created. Before launch, they stood before a silent crowd in Earth's orbit. Billions watched through live feeds. The commander, calm but emotional, spoke only one line before they departed. If the Dauntless still exists, then humanity's spirit still lives beyond the stars. The engines roared softly, and the ship disappeared into the black sea of space. The journey took months. As they got closer to the coordinates, strange things began to happen. Their clocks started to drift out of sync. The stars ahead seemed to bend as if space itself was folding inward. Their instruments couldn't decide where they were. Readings showed they were in multiple locations at once. It was the same kind of distortion the Dauntless had once created. And then, it appeared. Out of the void, a faint glow began to form. At first, it looked like a reflection. Then the shape grew clearer, long, curved, with a soft pulse of light running along its surface. It was the Dauntless floating in absolute silence just as it had years ago. But it was different now. Larger, brighter, almost alive. The human crew sat in stunned silence. None of them spoke for several minutes. The ship they were looking at was not just a piece of metal. It was something living, breathing, like a being made of thought and light. When they tried to scan it, their computers froze. When they tried to send a message, their systems powered down. Then suddenly a single word appeared on their main screen, written not in any language but in light. Welcome. The commander stared at it, unsure if it was a greeting or a warning. But before they could react, a beam of light reached out from the Dauntless, touching their ship gently. Every screen flickered. Every person felt a vibration deep inside, not painful but powerful. In an instant, they saw things. They saw the seventh dimension, an endless ocean of glowing energy where time didn't move in a straight line. They saw how the Dauntless had entered that place, broken apart, and been rebuilt by forces that were not alive in any normal sense. They saw the faces of the old crew, calm and peaceful, their minds merged with the ship, existing as light. They had not died. They had become something greater, guardians of knowledge that couldn't be spoken in words. Then the vision faded, and silence returned. The human crew realized that the Dauntless wasn't calling for help. It was reaching out to share something again. It wanted to teach humanity what it had learned. But before they could approach further, alarms rang out. The ship began to shake. Space around them started to twist violently. The same rift that the Dauntless had once opened was forming again. They tried to retreat, but it was too late. A massive wave of energy pulled them forward. The stars stretched, light bent, and reality cracked open before their eyes. Then, stillness. When they woke, everything was quiet. The screens were blank, and outside the window they saw nothing familiar. No stars, no galaxies, only light, endless and alive, flowing in patterns like the inside of a dream. In the distance, they saw the Dauntless, shining like a sun. And then they heard a voice, not through speakers, but inside their minds. Calm, warm, familiar. You came again. You always come. It wasn't one voice, but many, blending together. The old crew, the ship, maybe even the dimension itself. The humans didn't speak. They only listened. The voice continued. You seek what lies beyond, but what you must understand is that there is no beyond, only connection. What you call the seventh dimension is not a place. It is the heart of existence where all realities meet. We became part of it, and now so can you. The crew stood there, unsure whether to be afraid or amazed. The energy around them pulsed softly like a living heartbeat. It wasn't a trap, it felt like an invitation. But then one of them asked the question everyone feared to ask. If we go further, will we ever return? The voice paused for a long time. Return is a word for those who still live in time. You have already gone farther than any being before. What happens next depends on what you choose to see. The ship began to glow brighter, and suddenly they could see through its walls. They saw not just their own universe, but countless others, layered upon each other like ripples in water. They saw how every decision, every act of courage, created a new reality. How the laughter of those who mocked humanity had echoed into nothing, while the bravery of those who reached for the unknown had shaped the very structure of creation. And then they understood. The Dauntless had not broken the seventh dimension. It had become part of it. The light began to fade. The crew felt their ship being pushed gently back away from that glowing world. The Dauntless pulsed one last time, sending out a beam of light that crossed galaxies. When the human explorers awoke, they were drifting near their home system. Months had passed, but they were unharmed. Their systems showed something impossible. Their ship had traveled through billions of light years in seconds. The data they brought back changed everything. The equations, the energy readings, the patterns, all pointed to one truth. Humanity had made contact with a living form of the universe itself. From that day, no one doubted again. The Galactic Council ended all arguments. Humanity was no longer the small, fragile species they once mocked. They were now seen as the race that had touched the infinite and returned with light in their hands. Across the stars, every world watched the skies differently. Because now everyone knew. The universe had heard humanity's voice, and somewhere, deep within the folds of dimensions, the Dauntless glowed softly, watching over them. It had not ended. It was only waiting for the next call. Years had passed since the explorers returned from the light. The memory of that journey still lived inside them. The glow of the Dauntless, the soundless voice, and the feeling of standing before something greater than existence itself. They had seen what no one else had ever seen. And though they came home, a part of them never truly left. The data they brought back spread across every human colony and research station. Scientists worked day and night to understand it. The equations, the energy maps, and the dimensional readings became the foundation for a new kind of science. For the first time in history, humanity was not copying the knowledge of older civilizations. They were leading it. The great alien councils watched in silence as humans advanced at an incredible speed. Ships began to move faster than light without breaking physics. Energy was drawn directly from the structure of space. Diseases were cured, resources became limitless, and poverty slowly faded away. But even with all this progress, something deeper changed inside humanity itself. People no longer saw space as a cold, endless void. They saw it as alive, a vast living ocean of light, thought, and connection. The Dauntless had taught them that the universe was not something to conquer, but something to understand. Monuments were built on Earth, Mars, and other human worlds. Simple structures made of shining metal and glass shaped like the Dauntless's silhouette. At night, they glowed softly, as if listening for the heartbeat of the ship that had once guided them. Children grew up learning the story, not as a tale of war or power, but as a lesson about courage, unity, and curiosity. They were told that it wasn't the ship's weapons or technology that made humanity great. It was their will to explore the unknown when everyone else laughed at them. The laughter was gone now. Across the galaxy, species that had once mocked or dismissed humans now looked to them with respect, and sometimes with quiet awe. Humanity had touched something sacred, something even the most ancient races had feared to approach. And yet, through all the progress and peace, one question still lingered in every human heart. Where was the Dauntless now? No one had seen it since that final moment of light, when it had vanished into the folds of the seventh dimension. Some believed it still traveled among the stars, invisible to the eye but close enough to hear. Others said it had become one with the universe itself, a guardian made of energy and memory. Then, one quiet night deep in the outer colonies, a strange event occurred. A group of astronomers were observing a distant region of space far beyond mapped territory. As they watched their instruments, the stars began to flicker, not randomly but in a pattern. The light pulses repeated at regular intervals, forming a rhythm that felt familiar. It was the same pulse. The heartbeat of the Dauntless. The signal was faint, almost too weak to detect but unmistakable. The astronomers immediately sent the data back to Earth. Within hours, every human observatory across the solar system was focused on the same point, and then they saw it. A faint outline, glowing softly at the edge of a dark nebula. The Dauntless. It didn't move, didn't speak, but the signal it sent carried something powerful. An image. When decoded, it revealed a view of the galaxy from above, vast and shining with threads of energy connecting every star like veins of light. At the center of it all was a small, glowing sphere. Earth. The message was clear. Everything was connected. For days, the world celebrated. People filled the streets, lights shone from every building, and ships lit their engines in tribute. Across alien worlds, messages of peace and unity spread. Even the most distant civilizations sent their respect. But there was more. The signal continued for 7 days, changing slightly each time. Scientists realized it was a countdown. No one knew to what. Some feared the Dauntless was warning them. Others believed it was preparing to return. When the final day came, every human and alien telescope turned to that single point in space. The entire galaxy waited. Then suddenly the stars went still. A wave of light spread outward, brighter than any sun but soft and peaceful. It passed through every world, every ship, every living being without harm. And in that moment everyone felt it, a quiet warmth inside, like being touched by sunlight after a long winter. No words were spoken. No sounds were heard. But every heart understood the same message. The Dauntless wasn't returning as a ship. It was never meant to. It had become something far beyond that, an eternal part of existence woven into the very rhythm of the universe. It was showing them that humanity's journey would never truly end, because every act of discovery, every question asked, was a continuation of that same spirit. When the light faded, space returned to normal. The Dauntless was gone once more. But from that day on, the galaxy was never the same. Something invisible yet powerful had changed. Ships across all species began to notice that hyperspace travel had become smoother, safer, as if invisible hands were guiding them. Energy fields were more stable. And sometimes when traveling near the edge of deep space, pilots reported seeing faint trails of light moving alongside them, patterns that looked exactly like the Dauntless's glow. Some called it superstition. Others called it faith. But deep down, everyone knew the Dauntless was still there. In time, humanity and the other races formed a new alliance, not for power or control, but for shared exploration. They named it the Accord of Light, a promise between species to never again let fear or pride stop them from reaching for understanding. The first rule of the Accord was simple: no voice shall be silenced in the search for truth. Humanity led the first joint mission under this new alliance. Their destination, the same void where the Dauntless had once vanished. The mission's goal was not to conquer or retrieve, but to listen, to hear whatever echo remained. When their fleet arrived, space looked empty. But when they turned on their sensors, faint vibrations began to appear, forming shapes, pulses, and patterns of light. The energy waves were gentle, flowing like tides. It was as if the universe itself was breathing. One of the explorers whispered quietly, "It's watching us." But it wasn't watching with eyes. It was observing through connection, through the very energy that bound everything together. The crew recorded the waves and sent them back to Earth. When analyzed, the data showed something breathtaking. The energy pattern wasn't random. It mirrored the heartbeat rhythm of a human child. It was life, pure and infinite. People realized then that the Dauntless hadn't just gone beyond the seventh dimension. It had touched the source of creation itself. It had learned that life, in all its forms, was made of the same light that flowed through every star, every planet, and every heart. From that day onward, humanity stopped searching for the Dauntless as a lost ship. Instead, they began to look for it in everything: the pulse of the universe, the birth of a star, the silence between two heartbeats. Generations passed. The story became legend, and the legend became faith. But unlike myths that fade, this one grew stronger, because from time to time, when the galaxy was quiet, someone would see it. A shimmer of light crossing the edge of vision, a whisper through the static, a faint heartbeat echoing in the dark. And when they did, they always felt the same thing: hope. Because the Dauntless wasn't just a ship anymore. It was a reminder of what humanity truly was, a race that refused to stop seeking, no matter how impossible the path. And somewhere, far beyond time and space, in the folds of the seventh dimension, the Dauntless still drifted, surrounded by light, its crew watching the stars they once called home. They didn't speak. They didn't need to. The universe had already heard their message, and in every corner of creation, from the smallest moon to the brightest galaxy, that message lived on, quiet, eternal, unbroken. We are still here,